You're about to discover a packing tip for a cruise that's not only going to make you have a better cruise, but it's probably going to save you money and a lot of stress. I'm Gary Beveridge, and this is another of my tips for travelers. Now, we don't go on vacation, we don't go on a cruise and plan to be ill. However, 50% of cruisers will suffer from some kind of problem or medical issue that requires some kind of attention. But by packing a personalized first aid kit, you are going to have a much less stressful time, and also you are going to save money. So that's why I recommend bring your own, so you don't have to rely on the medical center, the shops on board, or local pharmacies in the ports you call on. There are 10 things that you need to be prepared for that could possibly happen to you or your partner or your kids, and that's what I think you should really address in this personalized first aid kit. If there's only one thing that you remember, it is a dental repair kit. There are no dental facilities on board whatsoever. So if you have a filling fall out or a crown come off or some problem like that, having a little dental repair kit that you can get from the pharmacy, which will enable you to fill a hole, stick back a crown, so it can tide you over till you can get to a port and you can perhaps find an emergency dentist or even wait until the end of the cruise. I have been saved a number of times on cruises by taking a kit with me when something has happened or someone I know has had a dental problem. No one really knows when seasickness is going to hit them or whether it's going to hit them, and even people who have had no incidents of seasickness could suffer from seasickness on a cruise. So make sure that you, in your kit, have something to deal with seasickness that you know works for you. So if you haven't been on a cruise before, talk to your pharmacist or talk to friends and find out what worked best for them. Also take products for gastro problems, so for example diarrhea and some of the consequences of diarrhea. So for example products like Imodium. It's also a really good idea to take rehydrating products with you, so you can buy products like Diarrhelite, for example, which will help reboost and get you back the minerals and the water that you've lost if you do suffer from that particular problem. Linked to that, it's very important to take a hand sanitizer product or hand sanitizer wipes, because although the most important way to prevent getting things like norovirus, if it is spreading around the ship, is to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Having hand gel with you as you go out on tours or around the ship is a really good idea, just to keep your hands as clean as possible, because actually the way that coughs, colds and things like that are spread, but also the norovirus is spread, is through touching products and then doing things like touching your mouth. So wash your hands is really important, but have hand sanitizer gel. Pain relief is really important to have now. Of course, you may need it because you've self-inflicted it from overindulging and partying too much, so you might have a bit of a hangover or headache. But pain relief is really important if you get a headache or some other bangs, scrapes or whatever. So whatever you prefer, whether it's ibuprofen or paracetamol. Personally, I like to take both because ibuprofen is really good as an anti-inflammatory, and of course paracetamol is pretty good in terms of pain management. But of course, in different countries, there are all sorts of brand names: Advil, Tylenol, aspirin, whatever works for you. Next, make sure that you've taken something for coughs, colds, and sore throats. So it's a really good idea to pack some throat lozenges or even some cough mixture or some sort of pill or thing that you like to take if you find yourself coming down with sort of flu-type symptoms. So, for example, some products in some countries are things like Lemsip, Night Nurse, or Day Nurse. So products that help deal with outbreaks of cough, colds or sore throats. Getting sunburned, and quite severely sunburned, is a problem that happens on many cruises to warmer climates. People, they're on vacation and they're excited and they don't really think about it. So very important, make sure that you've packed lots of sunscreen, and of course the higher the factor the better, but also make sure that you've packed things to deal if you do get sunburnt. So for example things like aloe vera gels, which are very good if you do get sunburnt. But the most important thing to have in that kit is really, really good sunscreen. Now, depending on where you're cruising to, it is also a really good idea to have something to help prevent bites and stings, so mosquitos or flies or whatever they are. So of course it depends a little bit where you're cruising to. So in some parts of the world, for example, when there's the Zika threat, from mosquitoes, really, really important to make sure that you have really good protection. So if you're traveling in those regions, really important that you've packed in that little first aid kit some mosquito or insect repellent that you know is really good. Use it both with sunscreen, so you have to put sunscreen on and then apply that afterwards. One of the areas that certainly I found very helpful, and it's helped me a lot on cruises, is by packing in my first aid kit things to deal with wounds. So obviously adhesive plasters of all different shapes and sizes if you cut yourself, bang yourself. Basically buy one of those packs which has all different sizes in. The other thing which is really important is adhesive tape or bandages. And that might sound kind of dumb and a little bit extreme. However, if you're quite clumsy like me, it's very easy to perhaps actually break your toe. So twice on trips, I've actually broken my toe from stubbing it out and about. There's nothing you can do if you've done that. However, all you have to do is strap it up. So of course, if you've got that handy, you can just strap it up and carry on. Also, in that little wound kit, pack some antiseptic cream as well. So if you have cut yourself or damaged yourself or injured yourself out and about, you can then apply some antiseptic cream before you put on the plaster. Now, if you know that you suffer from hay fever or allergies, really important that in that kit you have sort of antihistamines and products to deal with that, particularly if you're heading off into warmer climates. So whether it's in the Caribbean with lots of flowers out and about, you might find that your hay fever actually kicks in. So really important, make sure that if you do ever suffer from that, you have some of those. To get those, you're going to find it very difficult because you're not going to sell in the shop. You don't want to have to go to the medical center and pay to see a doctor to get that, or even wrestle with going to a pharmacy and making sure you get an antihistamine that you know works for you. Another thing, of course, although it's probably not strictly related to first aid, it's probably more fun aid, is if you're sexually active, don't forget to bring along things like condoms. The Travel Medical Alliance reports that 50% of cruisers will experience some kind of medical related issue on a cruise. So if you're traveling as a couple, it's likely that one of you is going to need something. Now, hopefully it's not something severe. It's going to be something relatively minor. Now, if you've packed a personalized first aid kit covering the 10 main things that you could suffer with, you're going to save yourself a lot of stress, a lot of strain, and a lot of money, because you're going to be able to deal with things yourself. I hope you found that helpful, and if you did, I'd love it if you watched many more of my Tips for Travelers videos, because they will give you inspiration, advice and tips on how you can make much more of your very precious travel time and money.